Hey guys, what's up? Alex Scott here with Consordini.com. Got another studio gear review for you guys today. This one I'm super excited about. We are going to be taking a look at the Klark Teknik EQP-KTs. I have a pair of them. You can see them kind of peeking out in my rack behind me here. We're going to take a closer look at them and hear how they sound in just a minute. What are these exactly? Well, they are a recreation or kind of a clone or a remake of one of the most legendary recording and mixing and mastering equalizers of all time, the Pultec EQP-1A. Now, the original Pultecs were invented, I believe, back in the 50s and were used for all different kinds of things. They were used at radio stations to kind of equalize and control program frequencies, or like, the whole signal output of the radio station, but they were also used extensively in mastering houses and in recording studios as kind of basic all-purpose equalizers. They were used in vinyl cutting processes as well to kind of control frequencies there, especially if you were doing any kind of mid-side processing, which was really popular with mixing down to vinyl back in the day. These would have been used for that as well. So they're designed to be, or were originally designed to be, incredibly versatile units and work on as many different sources as possible. But as such, they've kind of gained a really legendary reputation over the years. Original vintage Pultecs might, if you can find one in good working order now, might run you anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 each. Now, this is because they're incredibly old at this point. Like I said, 1950s, that would put them at 60 or 70 years old, depending on the unit. But just finding one with original tubes in it, because it is a tube device, by the way, there's 3 tubes in each unit. Finding one with the original tubes in good shape that sounds good and has been well taken care of is next to impossible. They did make quite a few of them, but again, over the course of 60 or 70 years, the fact that they're a sensitive electrical device, a lot of them have bitten the dust throughout that almost better part of a century, actually. But they are revered for a very good reason. They sound absolutely incredible. Now, if you don't have 5 or 10 grand to spend per unit on the original ones, there are a lot of manufacturers making modern recreations and clones at a variety of price points. The Klark Teknik versions that we're going to be taking a look at are actually two of the cheapest, or one of the cheapest options out there. They retail for $299, but just because they are inexpensive does not mean they have skimped on sound quality at all. They use custom-wound Midas transformers in them, and then they also do have 3 tubes in each unit. I've opened them up and confirmed myself, and they sound absolutely fabulous. Now, I have not had the privilege or pleasure of working with a true pair of original Pultecs. I have used some very high-end modern recreations, one that run into the thousands per unit, and I can say that these ones, they might sound a tiny bit different, but they sound every bit as good. They're incredible sounding EQs, and again, even though they're very inexpensive, I never hesitate when strapping them across my master bus. I use them for mastering pretty frequently. The top end in particular is absolutely gorgeous. But let's go ahead and pull the camera over and take a look and a listen to these fabulous tube EQs. Okay guys, so here we have our Klark Teknik EQP-KT Program Equalizer. They even said Program Equalizer with an S, just like they did back in the 50s. Super vintage looking and vintage feeling pieces. The knobs are not detented, or they're not switching pots or whatever like you'd find on real high-end mastering gear, but they do have some nice little stops for in between every single number, little basic detents in there, so you can dial up 2 units to exactly the same settings, which is really reassuring, especially when you're using them in a mastering context. So we have them set pretty flat at the moment. I generally like a slightly broader bandwidth when I'm working with Pultec type EQs, but you can control the bandwidth from sharp, which is like a real sharp peak on your EQ, all the way out to very, very broad. I usually like somewhere around 7. Now, the interesting thing about Pultecs, if you've never seen one before, is that it is not a normal turn it up, turn it down type of EQ. We have boost, and then we have cut. And this is the top end, this is the bottom end, so you have control over high frequencies and low frequencies separately. And on the high frequencies, you can select the frequency that you're boosting at, and then you can separately select the frequency that you're cutting at. So for instance, if we were to cut at 10K, you actually turn it up, you turn the knob up to get 10K to turn down, so to speak. And then we say boost at 16, up to 2. You're now creating an EQ curve where it's dipping at 10K and then boosting again at 16 or 12 or anything else. So you can create some really interesting and creative EQ curves using this unit. So having it kind of zeroed out, my favorite thing to do with these particular ones, the 12K boost sounds absolutely wonderful. So I've got a mix pulled up here. This is this track that I did using a sample of a musician that I met in Morocco. This is just an unmastered direct feed from the stereo mix. So let's go ahead and add some 12K. Bypass, and here comes the 12K. So you can hear how it just immediately makes the whole mix sweeter sounding. You can even exaggerate a little bit more. But now we could boost there and then actually cut at the very top a little bit. So now we're rolling off it right up around 20K, but boosting around 12. So this is just going to dull the very extreme highs a little bit, but still boost down lower in that treble register. So here's bypassed and back in. Very nice. Now, take away that high-end stuff. The low end, you only have one frequency selector for the low end, and it actually controls where you're boosting and cutting. So with this, you can actually do a really well-known trick where you actually boost and cut at the same time. So if we do 100 hertz, and say we boost at 3, or boost by 3 rather, and then cut by 2, listen to what happens to the low end. It creates this interesting sculpting effect that, where you kind of have these two EQ curves, one that's boosting and then one that's cutting, and they fight each other, right? And it creates a really interesting tightening of the bass. So here it is without. Here, let's go to a part with a little bit more. Now I'll kick it in. It just has this really interesting way of controlling or removing muddiness in your low end. So I like to do that at 60, 100, or even sometimes 200 hertz, depending on the signal. So when you take that and you add in a nice little boost at 12K, little tiny bit of cut way up at the very top just to prevent any harshness. Here it is without, here's dry. Now let's kick it back in. Here's dry again. And back in. Really, really fabulous sounding EQ. Okay guys, so there you have it, the Klark Teknik EQP-KTs. As I've said, and as you guys just heard, these are incredible sounding EQs at any price, especially at $299 each. As far as I'm concerned, they're one of the best deals in pro audio right now, or really ever. The fact that you can get a quality vintage style tube EQ like this that really is suitable for putting on master buses. You know, I use it for mastering all the time, and for my bigger clients that I get, you know, you don't have to have this insanely expensive gear where you're spending $5,000 plus per channel for an EQ or a compressor or something. It's just not necessary. You know, there are so many companies making such great recreations of this classic vintage gear that we all know and love, and they're doing it for such an affordable price. You know, for guys like myself who, I sometimes do get to work on records that feature bigger people, but I am not some first call studio. I am just in my own personal home studio here. I don't have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to be spending on gear. The fact that we can now access equipment like this that really sounds authentically vintage, it has the tubes, it's got the transformers, it's got, the correct wiring, schematic, circuit, all that stuff. It's just incredible. That we live in kind of a golden age, kind of a renaissance, in my opinion, of gear like this. And you'll see my studio is chock full of it. These pieces that are reminiscent of this vintage stuff and give you that hands-on feel and that real incredible, whether it's a piece of tube gear, gives you that tube sound, or, a classic Neve compressor or preamp or something like that. We have access to recreations that capture 95 to 99% of the vibe of that original gear, but it's 1/10 the price in a lot of circumstances. So I really cannot recommend them enough. If you do mixing, if you do mastering of any kind, and are on a bit more of a budget for your equipment but want to experiment with some analog stuff, these are just such an incredible option. I highly recommend you guys go pick up a pair. What do you guys think of the Klark Teknik stuff? They have also re-released the LA2A compressor and the 1176 compressor, both at incredibly competitive price points. What do you guys think of their gear? What do you guys think of this kind of resurgence or insurgence, I guess you could say, of these clone or remake pieces of gear from yesteryear? Do you guys like them? Do you own some of this stuff? Do you want to own it? Do you think it's a terrible idea and we should only ever buy the original vintage stuff? I've heard opinions across the board, but I would love to hear your opinions down in the comments below the video. So please chime in with any thoughts you might have. Again, my name is Alex Scott with Consordini.com. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.